Hello, everybody. This is Sue Frederick, and this is our third Courageous Heart class. And I have loved this class so much, and the amazing things everyone has talked about and shared. And let's just take a deep breath and pray in to start our third class as we close our eyes and breathe. We are lifted above to that place of courage, of higher awareness, of our own knowingness of how to navigate every challenge, every fork in the road, every crisis. There's always a choice, and one of those choices is always with a courageous heart, an open heart, and a heart wrapped in God consciousness. And whenever we can choose that, as we've talked about in this class, our day goes better. We are lifted up. We are shifted into the higher vibration of God awareness, where we remember that God the good runs this universe, and all we have to do is shift our energy up, open our heart, live courageously, and we are in alignment with that ever-present God the good of this loving universe. And so it is. So I think as we wait for a few more people, I'm just going to start with a few things I wanted to say, and then we'll get going on our discussions. As I was working on our third class and what I wanted to talk about, it really was clear to me that the first question that we always have to come back to, because I think it's so important, is why do we think it's important to live a courageous life? And you might think, oh, everybody knows that, but that's not true. I mean, we need to really look at how that makes a difference just every single moment of every single day, not in terms of the big stuff. Yes, we know that when we're facing a huge life decision, courage is part of it, whether it's a move somewhere or it's starting a new career or whatever that those big things are. We know that courage is essential for those, but also I want us tonight to really go into the moments of every day and really talk about how every breath is a moment of courage. Every breath where we say, lift me above this physical world and my view of these problems and challenges and crises and this and that. Lift me above it to see it differently and hold me in the loving flow of God consciousness. To ask for that is to be asked to be lifted into the courageous response to whatever faces you that day. And the thing I know about life, and you all know it too, is that as intuitive as we are, we never know what's coming. And that's on purpose, because the way life is set up down here in the physical world is, if we knew everything that was going to happen, we wouldn't be learning. It would be like playing Monopoly, but already owning all the hotels. It's like, that's not how the game works down here. We can see potential things, like I've often had precognitive dreams, but there's always a free will in all of that. And the other thing I know is that you'll have a feeling that something might be coming, but your mind may not let you see it, because the way we live life, we are asked to be courageous, to not know what's coming, to not know that you might wake up one morning and there's a family crisis to deal with right away, to not know that certain things are going to happen, whether it's in career, in finances, in love, in health, that are just going to sort of gobsmack you. Because when that happens, that's a beautiful free will choice point here on earth. And that is the juicy stuff. That's what we're here for. And that's how we develop that heart muscle of living courageously. So I was thinking about that this morning, because this morning I was kind of gobsmacked by some stuff, and I watched myself. I just watched me first want to run and face it head on in the physical ego way of human nature. And then, thank God, I was made aware by spirit. Wait, Sue, you have a choice. Sit and meditate first. And also call in the help. And that's a very important part of this. When we talk about listening to God and listening and meditation, a part of that is also saying, please, divine guides, please, spirits, please, angels, please, God, consciousness, please, departed loved ones, everyone, lift me up to my higher wisdom, because I am lost in this moment. That simple prayer, I guarantee you, is going to change your day. It's going to change your ability to get through whatever is on your plate in that moment of challenge or crisis. Even for someone else, waking up to know that someone else you love is in trouble in some way. And rather than going into the drama of it that the ego mind wants to go into right away, to call in the prayer warriors, to wrap them in prayer first, to see that person in their highest self, in their greatest healing, their greatest potential, and to hold that vision, and then call in the higher beings to help you wrap that person in love, and wrap that person in health, and wrap that person in everything that they need in that moment. That is so powerful. That is always answered. I can guarantee you all this. I may not have learned every lesson in this lifetime, but I have learned that we're never alone, and that there are always spirits and guides and higher beings who are here to help us, who want to help us. But they cannot step in and intervene until we ask. And that's a law of how it works in the physical world. And I just wish it wasn't that way, right? Wouldn't that be so much better if we didn't have to ask, if they were just always there fixing and changing and lifting us up? But what would be the learning in that again? It's kind of like we've got to fall in the mud so that we can learn how to get up. And the getting up is by asking for help from divine guidance, from spirit, from God. And today I had my own personal little miracles because of asking for help and calling out to spirit and to prayer warriors. And I encourage all of you that whenever you're facing something in your life that requires courage, first go to the courage of the divine, because the courage of the invisible world, God, spirit, angel, guides, whatever words you put to it, that courage comes first. And then our ego human self will have the courage to move towards the problem with love and grace. So the other thing I was thinking about courage is, does lack of courage mean that you lack faith in God the good? I think that is a really good question to ponder. And I think it's something I want you all to think about and maybe discuss tonight, because I was talking to someone, a client, and they were talking about how they didn't feel that they had courage. And so we were digging into their spiritual beliefs. And of course, if we don't believe that this physical world is simply school, and if we don't believe that divine beings are always here to help us, and that our true life lives in the divine realms, and we just drop in here for evolutionary purposes and to help our soul evolve and others, if we don't really believe that, then this physical world just can appear to be pretty awful and pretty terrifying. And I work with so many grieving clients who've had really hard things happen to them, things that you read about in the newspaper and think, oh my God, that's so terrible. And then when I work with these people, what's amazing to me is that most of them hear from their departed, encouraging them not to get lost in that tragedy story, and instead to just move forward in spirit with courage. That's from their own departed telling them that. So again, when we think of lack of faith in God or God, the good universe, then yeah, you're not going to have courage because you believe that you have to be in control of everything and that you are in control of everything. And so if you make a mistake, your life is going to go down the wrong direction and blah, 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 blah. This is not true, people. We are not really in control here, even though we make it seem like we think we are. And even when we're young, we can also probably go for a few years really thinking we're in control, and then suddenly we lose a loved one, or we have a health crisis, or a career falls apart, and we realize maybe there's another consciousness here that I need to understand how this world works. And when we dig around and we see the light, like in my background, and we realize that the light is perpetual and the light is what God is, and that we are always held in that light, then we can feel courageous, no matter what darkness, no matter what tragedy we face. So I guess my answer to the question, does lack of courage mean lack of faith in God the good? Yeah, I think it does. I think when we're scared and anxious and worried, which are normal things, and of course we're going to feel them, but when we dwell in it all the time, I think we are expressing a lack of faith in this good, divine, loving universe, a lack of faith in God. And so next time any of us find ourselves in that place of anxiety and fear and worry, we have to say to ourselves, do I believe there's a higher consciousness here, a God, the good divine order running the show, helping all of us evolve? And if I call out, do I believe that's answered? And then just see what comes to you and see how that helps you navigate whatever it is you're facing. Some of your stories in these past 3 weeks have been wonderful about having to go through major life changes and, learning to take it a day at a time with God in your heart, knowing that somehow you'll go in the flow and that you'll avoid the rock in the stream if you go with the flow. That is so good. That is so true. And that is showing that you have faith in this God, the good consciousness. But it's hard, and we know it's hard. I had a mom I was working with today, a grieving mom whose child was murdered, and she still has to deal with legal issues about that. And so every day she gets kind of pulled down into that story of the earth, of the ego, of the human world. And then she has to do her inner prayer work to lift up back to the God, the good universe, where her beautiful child is going, I'm good, Mom. I know you got to deal with that, but I'm here, and don't get stuck in the story. So to all of you, I just say we have to work every day to not get stuck in the story, to remember that what's real is the light. What's real is God consciousness. What's real is the divine realms, and that our core nature is as a divine being. And if we can get that straight and carry it in our heart every minute, we will live a courageous life. One of the things that someone reached out, and we'll talk about this in a minute, was having the courage to trust our intuition. And that is true, because once we realize, yes, I can get an intuitive answer, but I have to have the courage to trust it, then yes. And why would we have the courage to trust it? Because we know that the spirit world, the God world, is more real than the physical. So of course I can trust what comes to me from the higher realms when I really believe that God consciousness is running this show. But instead, when I believe that us flawed human beings are in charge, well, then there's a whole lot to worry about. So the other thing is I wanted to bring up is another reason to live courageously, or why we have to live courageously, is we are always pushing here on earth. We are always pushing the barrier of human potential. And I love that idea. I mean, back in the 70s, this is why I went through Outward Bound, because even back in the 70s, that's how Outward Bound kind of promoted itself, come and explore your own. It was during, remember the human potential movement of the 60s and the 70s? It was so great. These amazing people were psychologists and brilliant philosophers were talking about how we have no idea the human potential and that we have to keep pushing the boundaries of it in order to find it. And so at Outward Bound, when I was doing that, they were saying the physical body has no boundaries of its potential because it all comes from the mind, right? So if we choose to not be afraid, then we can overcome our fear of heights. If we choose to not be afraid, we can run 10 miles, even if we think we can't. That's what Outward Bound was really about. If you choose to believe it, you can climb that 14,000 foot peak. And in a physical world, that is so true. And I got to experience that in the 70s and help other people experience it. And it was exalting. It was incredible because you would come off of those courses going, I don't have any fear. I know that whatever I put my mind to, I can overcome, and my potential is enormous. Well, since then, I've learned that, yeah, and there's also grief here, and there's also loss, and there's also a lot of things that aren't that easy to deal with as climbing a mountain. I mean, I wish everything was like climbing a mountain. That's just one breath, one step, keep going. And here we have much more complicated things that do require enormous courage. But the thing that has occurred to me lately is that the thing of human potential, the barrier we're really pushing right now, is the barrier of having the word intuition believed and used in a regular daily life way of being without being considered woo-woo, right? So if I go around saying, oh, my intuition says to do this, half of the world will say, well, that's a bunch of malarkey, even though there's great science behind the validity of intuition. So all of you are tasked to trust your intuition when it comes to you, when you get that gut feeling, to not let your mind come in and make you doubt it. And that's a lifelong practice. It's a spiritual practice. And when you see spirit or feel spirit telling you something, write it down. I'm a big fan of that kind of writing. When I get some kind of guidance like that, I pull my pen out right away and start writing, and just go with it instead of spending so much time that the human mind wants us to spend doubting it, analyzing it, thinking about it, questioning it. By then the juice of it is gone, So we really are, as humans, trying to expand our potential so that we can live as sixth sense beings, honoring our intuition, honoring our ability to see spirit, which is completely valid. If you can't see it, you can at least feel it. They talk about all the clairs, clairvoyance, clairaudience, claircognizance, etc. And we have all of those in us. It's just a matter of trusting what we get. And one of the things that I learned in working with grieving clients and connecting to their spirit is I'll get something that seems like nonsense, but I write it down, and then I have to have the courage to share it. And most of the time, that statement is the thing that makes the client go, wow, yes, and really helps them see that that's their child or that's their loved one, and that guidance that they're getting from them is right on. And all of us can do that. It's just it's not me doing it. All of us can do it. It's really a matter of trust, of calling in the divine to help, and then trusting what they say to you. Have you ever had a day where you're really struggling to solve problems about something, and your monkey mind wants to tell you one thing, but if you're quiet, you can hear this wisdom going, no, come over here and try this. Oh, go write that. Oh, go say that. And oh, don't answer that yet. There's just always this higher guidance that God is giving us. And we have to learn to trust that. So I'm giving you all the homework of intuitive living for a week, meaning that here's what you do. You sit down and you think about, well, maybe I've got to go to an event next weekend or something, or I have to go. I'm thinking about if I want to go on this trip. And I want you to sit in your meditation and picture all of that happening. And then trust your gut feeling. If the gut feeling comes back to you and goes, that doesn't feel good, then it's your intuition going, it's not the right time to do it, or, it's not something my gut says I should do. And then act accordingly. And I know some of you know the story that my favorite intuition experience was when I was in England visiting my daughter. I think it was like 2008. She was doing a summer program at Oxford, and I'd never been to England before. And I've always been obsessed with England. And so I wanted to cover as much of it as I possibly could. And I bought a rail pass, and I spent a day or two with her in Oxford, and then she was busy. She was in school. So every morning I'd wake up and go, what city do I want to go to today? What feels juicy? And Liverpool would pop up, and I go, okay, is today the day for Liverpool? And my gut would say yes. And I'd walk myself to the train station, and I'd go to the train station, and I'd check the times, and and again, I check my intuition. Does that trains to Liverpool feel right? Yes. And I would get on it, and I never talked to another person. It was just me and God. And I even navigated things like, should I wait for the bus, or has the bus already come? And I would listen, and it would say, no, the bus is coming. And so I'd wait longer. And that trip was so God miracle filled. It was extraordinary. I had no one else to answer to, me and God. And then I'd go back to Oxford and see my daughter, and then take off again. And if I could live every day of my life like that, I would love it. But of course, we get lost in work here and details and relationships. And so it's harder. But imagine that you're on a trip all by yourself, and you have no one to answer to. And all you have to do is ask a question and trust your gut response. The other last thing I'll say is that when your intuition is really coming through for you, it comes through in a sense of love and knowingness and courage. Real intuition never comes through in a way that makes you afraid. And it always comes through in that God way, where you'll just get it through your body and go, oh, I know the right thing to do. And even if it's a hard thing you're facing, it comes through in an empowering way. So on that note, I would like us to discuss our homework, because we had some good homework. We had talking about our courage journals and reporting back about courageous conversations, either with ourselves or with someone else. And writing our new vision of a world filled with love and open-hearted compassion, and then accomplishing 3 courageous things again. So I will mute us for our discussion unless anybody wants to share before I pause the recording. Does anybody have anything to share for the students who, like Gail, who's at home, who couldn't come tonight? Or do you want me to pause and we'll talk about it privately? Okay, I guess that means pause. So, all righty. Okay, so we had the recording off while people shared, but I just want to say that if you're coming back to this recording, just know that we all talked about moments when we were able to quiet the mind and really trust the courageous heart that we all have that connects us to our God consciousness, call in divine help, the loving presence of God, and make our actions, our statements, our words come from that higher place. And that when we do that, we're living courageously and our life goes in a better way. And one other final thing is that I worked with a lot of, I talked to 3 amazing women this week on my podcast, Mystical Conversation Podcast, and they all talked about this turning point in their life where they had just had devastating loss of a child. And I was interviewing, first I interviewed Elizabeth Boisson, who founded Helping Parents Heal. And she said she came to a moment after her son died where she said, I realized I was at a choice point. I was either going to be that lady who spends the rest of her life on the couch with a bottle of vodka, or I was going to get up and let my light shine and, you know, help other people and move forward that way. And that was the courageous path. And she took that courageous path. And I think all of us, whatever we face, we come to the fork in the road where we know it's either the couch and the bottle of vodka, or it's get up, let your light shine, use your pain to help people and move forward. And that's the courageous choice, and the choice that we will be so proud of ourselves with when we do our soul review, when we can look back and go, wow, when everything fell apart, I really did just try again. And that's what life is about. Just to take another breath, just to call in the light, just to try again, no matter what you've been through. And so on that note, just telling everyone, I love you all so much. Thank you for going on this courageous heart conversation.
Thank you.
And you can all email me if you have questions or want to talk about something later on. I think you all have my email address. I'll send out this recording, but I think we missed all the juicy stuff. So I'm sorry for the people who weren't here tonight because you didn't get to hear our amazing stories that everybody shared. But this is Sue Frederick saying thank you so much. And until we meet again.
Namaste. It was a pleasure.
Love you all.